everyone. Thank you for joining me for another entry into our reading journal. I am your host, Voodoo Pickles, and today we're going to be talking about Jedi Search. So I don't know if I will have the actual reading journal part of this, like, completely done. I'm a little behind on my reading journal entries, TBH, like maybe like 20 books or so, but I will try to get that. And if I did, great, good job for me. Yay, you guys are going to be seeing it in this video. If not, I will put that as a nice ASMR video that I'll just link down below. Eventually, when I get to it. But we're going to be talking about Jedi Search. Jedi Search was written by Kevin Anderson and it was published in 1994. And it is a fiction, science fiction genre book. And this is the beginning of the Star Wars Jedi Academy trilogy. And the Jedi Academy trilogy is a whole series of books written by Kevin Anderson. But what I found out are there are several trilogies in the Star Wars universe that were canon before Disney got the Star Wars universe. And these take place before, during, and after the first three movies. This one takes place after the three movies, and there are also a bunch of standalone books with the characters in the original movies and some of these side characters. I had no idea. Until very recently, like around the time I read this book, and that's very exciting. Like, I am super excited to have read this book, and I'm going to talk to you about it. I'm going to format this one a little bit differently, mostly because it is very episodic, like the chapters with it and everything. So we're going to go through chapter by chapter. And it's just, I read this physically, like I had this here. This was the first book that my community voted that I read. And I gotta say, this was a great first one for my community to read. Thank you guys so much for voting on this one. I'm super excited about it. And all right, so here we go. The first chapter in this book, we follow Han and Chewie. They are on the Millennium Falcon and they are headed to Kessel. Kessel was a Imperial prison, and you heard, Han talk about the Kessel Run. So this is that same Kessel. It was an Imperial prison that Han used to smuggle things out of and into. So they're going there. They're getting used to not being smugglers anymore. So they're like, no, we are ambassadors from the New Republic. Why are we trying to sneak into this area? So they put on all their lights. The Millennium Falcon was outfitted by Leia with ambassador lights, ambassador signals, everything, so everybody can know that this is a political thing. So they go to Kessel. They get there and they're kind of excited to be like, yeah, I wonder what happened since, everything went crazy and since the last time we were here. And so they're there, the Millennium Falcon's there. And once they get close to Kessel, a TIE fighter comes out and starts firing at them. They start trying to get on the communications, letting them know that they're an ambassador until they see it's a TIE fighter. And then they're like, oh shit, what the fuck? And so they're trying not to fire out. They're doing some evasive maneuvers. They're trying to go on the radio, let them know what's going on. And then while they're doing these evasive maneuvers over the atmosphere of Kessel, an X-Wing fighter comes out and they're like, it's fine. We have help. They try and get on the communications to the X-Wing to be like, hey, what's going, like, we need to know, like, let me talk to you a little bit. Let's coordinate this. Until the X-Wing starts firing at them. And Han is just like, do you not know who I am? What the hell? Why are you firing at me? And so they're not responding to them. Neither of the ships are responding to them. So they're just like, all right, we have to get out of here. We have to figure out something to do. So they start doing some evasive maneuvers. They go down into Kessel, into the atmosphere, and they're trying to figure out how to get away from them, except there's more ships that keep coming after them. And they're starting to freak out. They're trying to They're trying to get out of there. In typical fashion, something on the Millennium Falcon is broken that Han swears was just installed and was ready to go, and it stops working. So they end up getting hit. They end up crashing into Kessel. And then we switch to chapter 2. So chapter 2 is following Leia, and she is on Coruscant. I don't know how to say that word. It reminds me of a croissant, and that's what I think of every time I see the word. And so Leia and Han are married, and they have 3 children. So that's the time frame that we have now. They are married, they have 3 children, and Leia is on Coruscant, and she is helping to run the political system there. She is trying to build up the New Republic with Mon Mothma. She is a senator in this arena. And she took over living in the Emperor's palace, and we see her running a Senate meeting. And everybody's talking about the type of things that are talked about at these type of meetings. Luke is there. And then when Luke is there, Leia perks up. Leia is excited to see Luke. And he tells the assembly that he tells them a little history on the Jedi Knights. And he tells them that it is time to start a new Jedi Academy. And that he needs their approval and assistance. He needs their approval so he knows that they won't fight him on building up a new academy. He also needs their assistance with finding resources to start the academy. Mostly he needs a planet that he can take these recruits to and teach them how to become Jedi Knights. And he tells them that he needs to train them, that he has all the information he needs to train them. He already has a few recruits lined up, and he just needs their approval and them to sign off on this. And we go through the main senators on this, who are people that you have seen previously in the movies or in books that you read that took place before this. And goes through and they give why they're concerned. And then Luke talks to them about their concerns, and they ultimately all agree. And in chapter 3, Leia goes back to her quarters in the Emperor's palace, and she relaxes, she unwinds. She even talks about how she used to care a lot for how she looked as a princess. She's like, I used to care a lot about my hair, them space buns. And she was like, now I don't have time. I'm so tired. I have so much to do. She's thinking about her children. So like I said earlier, her and Han have 3 children. They have a set of twins, which is Jason and Jaina, and they have a baby that they named Anakin. The baby is about 6 months old. The twins are almost 2 years old, and she's thinking about them. She's worried that she's not going to be a good mother because her twins are about to come back. So when she gave birth to her, when she found out she was pregnant with the twins, Luke told her that her twins need to be protected because they are going to be Jedi children. So they need to be protected. Any interaction or contact with the dark side within their first 2 years of life could be catastrophic to their whole life. So once she gave birth to these 2, she gave them to her most trusted servant, her most trusted person. And that person, Luke and a couple of others, went and they found a very secluded planet. This planet was erased from all navigations. This planet was kind of erased from Leia's mind. And so her children were taken there, and her servant Winter is there raising her children, basically, so that they can be protected. And once they hit 2 years old, they can come back to her. So the twins are almost 2 years old, and she is very nervous about being a mom to these toddlers, especially since she's only seen them like once every few months with Han in the middle of space. They would be brought to her, and she could see them, she could hang out with them, she could, touch them, hug them, be like, yay, these are my children. But after that visit was over, they were taken away from her. And so she's worried about that. She's describing what she sees in her room. She has a lot of alt from Alderaan, which Han won or acquired for her. She doesn't ask him where he gets things anymore. She just trusts that he wasn't too much of a, or I guess didn't take them from anything important, really. So we find out that in the last trilogy, right before this book, Han won Leia a planet in a card game. And that's where all the survivors of Alderaan now live. She resettled them there on this new planet, and she's just kind of thinking about Han. She's thinking about her children. She's thinking about setting up all of these, the New Republic and all of these political systems. And she's just like, I'm just tired. I'm so tired. She gets ready and she's like, all right, I can't wait to hear from Han. He hasn't contacted me yet, but he should be at Castle by now. And she's like, I hope he's not just going off, finding people that he used to hang out with and just forgot to call me. So she's like, I'm going to try and not get mad at him yet. And when she's finally unwound from her day, Luke is at her door. And she's like, oh, hey, Luke. And then she remembers she has Jedi training with Luke. And she's like, all right, we're going to go through this. And so Luke is training Leia to be a Jedi Knight. He's training her how to use the Force. He's training her as a Jedi. And she is not that great with it. Like, the way that he's trying to train her on the physical parts of it, like, it's not so physical, but using the Force type things in these physical ways. She's not the best at it. And Luke is kind of admonishing her, telling her that she needs to devote more time and energy into her training. She needs to pull away from the political parts of it, and she needs to make this a priority, or else she will never be a Jedi Knight. And while he's telling her this, she snaps at him. And she's like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to be a Jedi Knight, which surprises Luke. He's like, what do you mean? And she's like, maybe I don't want to be like you. And we go over briefly, like, the things that Luke went through. Like going to the dark side and then, killing all of these people and then being brought back and all of it. She's like, I don't want to go through the things that you've gone through. She's like, why would I want that? She's like, I just want to do my job and be a good wife and mother. And that takes Luke back because it never occurred to him that she wouldn't want the things that he wants. And when he's telling her that she needs to put more time into this, she get like part of her snapping was she's like, do you not know what I'm doing? Do you not know my days? She's like, I am setting up treaties with alien life forms that the Empire didn't even acknowledge as existing. There are no protocols on how to deal with these different species. We don't even know their language. And I'm brokering treaties within the New Republic with these different species. I'm trying to set up a whole new republic. I'm sending out ambassadors here. I'm taking care of refugees. I'm trying to rehome people. And she's like, I'm trying to do all of this. I'm trying to be a good wife. And then she's like, and then on top of this, I have my children coming home. She's like, pretty much, don't tell me I need to devote more time to this. And so that throws him off because he's just like, okay. He's like, I was not aware that you did not want these. You did not want to be like me. And she's just kind of like, duh. And so she's just like, I don't want to do this. And he's like, it's fine. It's okay. I'm sorry. He's like, it was really insensitive for me to imply or even to tell you that you should devote more time for this. I understand the things that you are going through, even though he doesn't. He has no idea. He didn't realize how much she was doing in the New Republic because he wasn't there. And they don't talk as much as, a brother or sister might, or even as friends would. He just kind of assumes that she's there doing political things and not really understanding the scope of that. And so he's just like, okay, he's like, I didn't realize, I'm sorry. And she's like, whatever, I'm just tired. I'm sorry I snapped at you. And he's like, it's fine, it's fine. And he's like, well, let's pull back from the physical part of training with the Force. And he's like, if you're going to fully go into this political system, you should have mental blocks in place. So let's train, mentally about this. So he tries to kind of break through her mental walls and kind of go into her mind a little bit. So she's there. She already has these mental walls fully built up, and he is surprised that she already has this already built up. And so he's trying to get into her mind, and she's fighting him back. And he's like, it's pretty well done. And he finds that the way it's described in the book is he has his fingers over her mind, and he finds a little nub in the back that he's like, that's weird. I've never seen this before. I'm gonna poke it. And he does. Mentally, it's all mentally. They're not touching each other or anything, mentally. He's like, I'm gonna poke it. So he pokes this little nodule in the back. He's described as the back of her head. And he gets physically pushed away from her. And she's freaking out. She's like, I am so sorry. I didn't even try to do this. I am so sorry. And he's like, no. He was like, that wasn't you. He's like, he's like, let me see something real quick. Let me try this again. And so they go back into their type of meditative state. And he goes back and he touches the nodule again. And it physically pushes him back. And he's like, well, that's fascinating. And she tells him, she's like, I wasn't consciously trying to do this. And he was like, I know that. And he was like, I've never seen this happening. I've never heard of this happening. That's very interesting. And so he was like, that may be a way for us to find some recruits. He's like, maybe, I don't know. He's like, but that's a fascinating little tidbit to learn. And then on the other side of the planet, there is Wedge. He was a commander of a space cleanup crew to where they're trying to take all the debris from, the war, the multiple battles, all of the things that are now just kind of floating around in space or getting caught in atmospheres. So after, the Empire was taken down and everything, they're going up into rebuilding. That's kind of the phase we're in now. We're not at the beginning of rebuilding. We're kind of more in the middle of rebuilding. And so he was a commander. He was made a general, and he commanded a fleet of people that would take resources from these shot, broken ships that were floating off in space from battles. And so if they were able to be salvageable, they were salvaged. If they had resources for them, their resources were taken. Otherwise, they were destroyed. So he was working on that, and he kind of got sick of it. And he was just like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to do this right now. So he asked Leia to be grounded, to be taken out of the fleet for a bit. And so she's like, okay, that's weird, but whatever. I'll put you in charge of this construction crew. So I almost said croissant. On the planet, there is a lot of these buildings and everything to where you can't see the bottom. You can't see the planet, like the actual ground of the planet. They just kind of started building on top of each other. And so what she's trying to do now is, in this old abandoned part of this imperial city, is she's having the buildings taken down so everything can be rebuilt. So she can build a new city that can house a lot of refugees, can house people. It can just rebuilding this whole planet. So they're taking down these buildings, a little sector by sector. And so now he's in charge of that. And the way that they have it is they have these giant droids that are probably about as big as an AT-AT, and they're floating, and they go through and they rip down buildings and they tear them apart into building components. And so that, new areas can be built. So he's in charge of these, and he has like 4 of them with his crew working in different parts of the sector. And he is really concerned with a group of people. So the way they're described is these were people who are running from the Empire or who were not able to be a part of the Empire society generations ago. And what they did was they ran into the abandoned parts of the city because these parts were abandoned for a very long time. And because they were on the ground level and they didn't have access to anything that brought them above the ground level, they mutated. So they are completely white. They mostly can't see from what Wedge can tell. And they can't communicate with them at all. Anytime they see them around, they run away or they try to attack. And they don't seem to understand any type of language that Wedge or the droids try to speak to them. So what he does is he decided he's going to take a couple of droids and he's going to create large flashing sounds and sirens, and does this right before a building is demolished. And he's hoping that they get out of the way while this is happening. So he's taking over this little crew, and this is kind of what he does right now. This is his job, is he's just demolishing buildings by buildings by buildings and trying to save as much of these different, at this point they're kind of a different species from what they were before, as he can. And while he's going through this, he sees one building and he was like, the scans don't show anything special on that. And the droid tries to break down the part of the building, except it's too strong. Like, it's reinforced for some reason. There's nothing shown on any of the information that he has that this building should be reinforced. And he's like, should I shut down the droid? He's worried because it takes 4 days to get it back starting again, because these are older droids and they're super large. And so he stops the droid because the building won't break down. So he's like, obviously there's something valuable in there. So him and his team go and they find an Imperial torture chamber. And they also find this giant rat creature thing that has armor on it. And the droid, I guess, when it started to break down the building, it destroyed some of the nest of one of these rat things. And they're fighting it off. And so it created a kind of nest in this torture chamber. And so he lets Leia know that he's like, we need to send a message to Leia and let her know that we found something. And so Leia and Luke come to Wedge and they go into this torture chamber. They get all of the computer systems and they're like, we could find some valuable information in this. Luke's excited about it. He was like, I need R2-D2 and C-3PO to comb through these records to see if they can find any information about Jedi or like some names, so we can start finding recruits, kind of check the lineage of these Jedi. Because they realize that this torture chamber is a large part of the Jedi genocide. So there is also a scanner in here that has 2 crystal paddles that create an outline of something, of a person that it scans. And on this person that it scans, it shows blue. Like, they take a scan of Luke and he has this blue glowy outline all over him. Takes a scan of Leia. She's got a blue, but not as strong as Luke. And they take a scan of Wedge, who has no blue on him. And they're like, this could be very valuable in finding Jedi recruits. He's like, if I'm not always there to help. And he looks at Wedge and he's like, hey, Wedge, let me try something real quick. And just randomly throughout all of this, he's just like, let me try something real quick. Let me touch your mind. And Wedge not wanting to be called or not be wanting to be like made fun of or show his men that he's afraid of any of this type of things. It's just like, okay. And he stands there really stiffly, and Luke uses his mind and finds the little nodule on the back of his head and he pokes it. Nothing happens. And Wedge is like, so you done? Like, we good? And Luke's just like, you just helped me solidify a theory that I had. Thank you. And that's Chapter 3. Chapter 4, we head back to Han and Solo, who are on Kessel. So the first chapter, they were attacked. They crashed into Kessel. Then the fourth chapter, we start with them getting captured. They're captured by a man whose name is Skynex. I'm afraid my jaw will get stuck in that sound. But he's described as a scarecrow, and he knows Han and Chewie, and Han vaguely remembers him, and Skynex tells him that he's taking him to Duel. And Duel, Han is just like, oh, who is that? Duel. And he remembers who Duel is. So Duel worked as a prison guard in this Imperial prison and would smuggle out Glimmerstim. And that was a drug that was used very heavily. He would smuggle it out of the prison, and he would give it to Han, and Han would smuggle it to wherever it needed to go, usually for Jabba the Hutt. Jabba would buy Glitterstim, Han would show up, take it, smuggle it away. And Han was pretty sure the last run that he had, where he had to dump the Glitterstim and therefore lost all the money for Jabba, and was why he was being hunted in the first place by Jabba. He was pretty sure that Duel narked on him. Told the Imperial guards that he was going to be there, that he was smuggling. Like he's pretty sure this happened, but he was never able to prove it. And so now Duel is there. And Skynex takes him to Duel, where they find out that in this Imperial prison, there was a coup. So after that happened with Jabba, Jabba got Duel as well. He put a bounty on both of them. And they were able to get Duel because he was more stationary. And he took his eyeball and crushed it. And wanted to punish him for Han, for what Han did. And even though he was like, I had nothing to do with it, I don't know what happened. And he had to beg him to just destroy that one eye and just kind of maim the other and just leave him with his life. And so that happened. But after that happened, he also did a coup on the whole prison guard system. He didn't want to have anybody to have that kind of power over him. Duel he's described as a frog type species of alien, and what he wants to rule his little own empire. And that he wants to have the final say on it. He wants to rule over it, and that's just what he wants in life. Very simple. So he performed a coup on this whole prison, and him and the guards that he had with him on his side, on his payroll, they took over the prison, and they locked all the guards that weren't on his side, and they locked them up, switched some of the prisoners out that would do what Duel said. And so those prison guards are there and everything. He took over the prison, and then he started buying X-Wing fighters, TIE fighters, any type of ship that could have weapons on it. He started buying those a lot while this whole mess was happening on the outside of the planet. He didn't care what was happening with the Empire. He didn't care what was happening with the rebels. Like, he just did not care. All he was worried about was Kessel. And so he started buying ships. He had them salvaged. He had them fixed up. And so he built his own fleet of hundreds of fighters. And he had some of the prisoners or some of his guards learn how to fly them and use the weaponry on them. And he's so worried that this planet is going to be taken from him that he bought all of this whole fleet. He had them scavenged. He had them built up. He also has an energy field that's going to be around Kessel, and we're working on it now. And so he took over the planet. He's planning on protecting the planet, and then he still has people, his prisoners, mining Glitterstim so that he can sell that off whenever he's up and running again. Like, that's his whole plan. Instead of smuggling out, he's like, I just took over the prison. I'm going to do this my way, and it's going to be all mine. So that's the kind of person Duel is. And this happened after the last time Han was on Kessel, so he had no idea. He didn't know Duel was still there. He thought it was still just an imperial prison, and he was going to let them know, like, hey, yeah, the Empire's gone, so I'm part of the New Republic. We're opening up trade and seeing if anybody, like, integrating people into this New Republic. So Duel took over the prison, and Han is brought to him. Duel blames Han for Jabba, even though Duel did tell the Imperial guards that Han was going to be there and he was going to be smuggling out Glitterstem. That's what he would do. When he would smuggle Glitterstem out, he would have smugglers mine it, and then he would smuggle this Glitterstem out and sell it off. And then once the operations got a little bit smoother or something, or the mine was almost depleted on the area away from the prison, he would leak this information to the guards, and they would go and they would bust up these miners, these smugglers, take them to the prison, and he would still have them mine and then smuggle that piece out, but now he wouldn't have to pay them. So he did this a lot on Kessel. And so he did do that with Han, and he tells Han, and Han's like, I fucking knew it. I knew it. And but Duel is just like, what are you doing here? He thinks he's there from Jabba, and he thinks that like I said, he wasn't paying attention to anything that was happening off of Kessel. He doesn't know what was going on. So he's just like, what are you doing here? And so Han tells him that the Empire's gone. He's like, the Death Star's gone, Vader's gone, the Emperor's dead. He's like, I'm with the New Republic. I'm coming here as an ambassador. And Duel's like, you're a damn dirty liar. No, you're not. And Han's like, yeah, I am. So Duel takes out some Glitterstem and uses it. And it is activated by light. So he takes it out of this little container. He uses it. And what it's able to do is he's able to look into Han's memories. And he realizes that, yeah, the Empire's gone. The Emperor's dead. Han is on the up and up now. And Han is really annoyed that he may see Leia in there and his children. But he's just like, I just need this to be over with. Because this is icky. And so he realizes Han is telling him the truth. And instead of freeing him and being like, whoops, my bad, he decides that he is going to keep him in the mines. And he is going to pretend he was never there. And this is as a form of punishment for all of the slights that Han has brought to him. And because of his eyes and everything, so he's just like, we're just going to take you and put you in the mine. So Han and Chewie are going to be taken into the Glitterstem mines. Chapter 5. We head back to Luke. So Luke has C-3PO and R2-D2 going through the Imperial computer systems. They're adding the database that they found in the torture chamber along with the original databases that they had on the planet when they took over. And kind of all of this gathering of information. So he has them combing through all of these records to find recruits. And C-3PO is just like, what do we need to find? Like, what are you looking for? And he's like, I'm looking for recruits. And I'm like, well, how do we find this? And R2 explains a little bit about how it's going to be finding like any anomalies, any patterns. And that's how they're going to find these recruits. So Luke is telling them, yep, you guys got this. I believe in you. Let me know if you guys find a recruit. He's like, I am off to go meet my first potential recruit. And he tells them that he's going to Eosha. And Eosha is a planet that's about to collapse. Like, it has geysers going off all over the place. There's earthquakes, there's mudslides, there's lightning, thunderstorms. Like, it's just kind of collapsing. Like, it's a very inhospitable planet. And he tells him he's going to go there to find a recruit named Gantoris. And they find out all the information about the planet, and C-3PO is just like, I'm super worried. Like, don't go there. Don't do that. And Luke's just like, I got this. So Luke heads there. And when he goes there, he is able to use the Force to navigate this geyser, like, minefield, to get to the village to where Gantoris lives. And he sees a couple of people there, and he is like, I need to speak to Gantoris. And they tell him that Gantoris is dealing with an issue, that there was a rock slide, and that they're trying to find the children that were in the rock slide. And so Luke tells them, take me there now. They do. They take him to where the rock slide happened. Everybody's trying to pull these rocks off, and they're worried about the children that are underneath it. So Luke uses the Force to lift the boulders and just kind of throw them off. And then after a while, he uses it to lift up the rocks that are there. And Gantoris is there. The villagers are there. They're kind of freaking out. It's like, what is this? And they're able to pull out 2 children. One of them is still alive, and the other one is not. And the other one passed when the original rock slide happened. So they pull them out, and then Luke lets the rocks go, and everything falls. And he tells Gantoris that he's there to talk with him. Gantoris tells him that he is not interested in the lies he's about to tell him. And Luke tells him, I don't understand what you're talking about. Gantoris tells him that he has had a dream of a man who offers him, or a dark man tempting him to evil. And Luke's like, I'm not that dark man. And Gantoris is like, we'll see. So, chapter 6. In chapter 6, we go back to Leia. And Leia is in this communications bay, waiting for the Cardian ambassador to call. So this is one of the most annoying people she has to deal with in this whole book. So he calls her. The Cardian ambassador is on this planet where they had the Imperial training grounds. And he is a man who believes that the Empire will rise up again and will crush the rebel scum. And so when she tells him that there's a new republic and they would like to open some communications between his planet and her planet and the new republic as a whole, and he tells her that she is nothing but a dirty rebel and she will be killed for what she has done for her crimes against the Empire. And she's like, there's no emperor. There's no empire. I need you to understand this. And he keeps saying, he's like, no, you are a filthy traitor. And so she's going to be throwing a party and inviting him to show him that they're not dirty rebels. They're trying to build a whole new civilization here. And he's like, I don't want to be there. And he's just really grossed out by her. He's just looking down on her. And he was like, you know what? The only reason I'm going to go to this is to make a pilgrimage to see the heart of the Empire before you guys got it. And I want to see the palace. And she's just like, all right, whatever, but you're showing up, right? And he's like, duh. And he hangs up on her. And then R2-D2 and C-3PO show up, and they're really excited. They found a pattern in the Imperial records that they're like, this may be a recruit. We're excited. And they're like, well, Luke's not here. What do we do? What do we do? And so they're like, let's go tell Leia. So they just kind of barge into her room to be like, all right, we're going to tell Leia. But before they barge in, Lando Calrissian shows up. And he's just like, hey, Leia, how are you doing? What is going on with you? Yeah, how are you? How's Han? How are the children? How is your dealing with this whole just super charming. And while he's talking to her, Leia like visually looks at him and she notices that his clothes are a little tattered He looks a little tired, maybe a little skinnier than what he usually is, a little disheveled. He's just overall disheveled. And while he's asking all of these very like, how are you doing? How is everything? She's just like, everything's fine. And she's like, how are you? How's your latest venture going? And he's like, oh, everything's going good. Everything's fine. Everything's okay. And then after he stops doing that, she's like, all right, you want to cut the crap and tell me what really happened? And he's like, I lost my mining operation in a card game. And he's trying not to look at her when he's telling her this. And she starts laughing and she was like, are you here to ask me for a job? And he's like, a job? You have a job? That sounds great. What would this job entail? And she's like, I don't know. She's like, going to parties, smoozing with people, being an ambassador. She's like, or I can just give you back your rank of general that you rightfully earned. And he was like, you'd give me a job. That is so great. And she's laughing and she's enjoying this little break from all of the other things she has to deal with. And that's when C-3PO and R2-D2 barge in and they're like, we may have found one. And she's like, may have found what? And he was like, they tell her that they may have found a Jedi candidate on the planet Umgul. And she asks what Umgul is. And they're like, it's a planet known for its blob races. And so she tells Lando, she's like, you know what? I think this may be the perfect job for you. She's like, why don't you take 3PO and R2-D2 and go check out this candidate? And so he was like, absolutely. So that's where they're going to be going. They're going to be going to the Umgulian blob races. And then chapter 7, we head back to Han and Chewie. They're taken into the mines and they're trying to think of like how they can escape. They're like, there's got to be like, they're trying to think of like logistically, how are we going to escape? Except they don't realize that the mines are pitch black. So when they're taken to the mines, Kessel is, if you see a picture of Kessel, it looks more like an asteroid. It is a odd-shaped planet. It's not circular at all. And because of this, it doesn't really have an atmosphere. There are machines on the surface of the planet that create an atmosphere. And when the Imperial prison was fully up and running, from the Empire, they were running all the time. They were running all the time to give the planet an actual atmosphere, and the space was just leeching off the atmosphere when this was happening, when they were fully turned on. Once Duel took over, he saw that he was just like, why am I wasting these resources? There shouldn't be anybody on the surface of the planet that would really need this, right? So they're down to like minimally keeping the atmosphere in place. So when they're walking, it is freezing. Like Han's fingers are starting to turn a little blue. They're like, he's starting to feel that chill of it. And then he also can't really breathe. Like he's starting to gulp for air while they're going from point A to point B. And Skynex and his crew have breathing masks on, and they also have thermal suits on. And he is purposefully keeping those from Han and Chewie just to punish them, just to make them feel bad. And right before Han and Chewie pass out from lack of oxygen, they head to the elevator that's going to take them down into the mines. The mining area, the way it's set up is they have where their cells are. They have a sleeping bay that's in there, the sleeping bay is there, and then there's these like little force fields that are on the sides of the bed, so once they're in bed, they can't move out. They can't get out, they can't do anything. That's kind of where their cells are. And then they have an eating bay, and that's just kind of like how it is. And so there's this like gathering area where the guards are. They have overseers there, and then they have the prisoners. They take them down in there. They put them both in a thermal suit, and they give them a breathing mask. And they put them on a mining car, like a transport vehicle. And the transport vehicle is going to be taking them down into the mines because they're going to get right to work. And once they start going, they notice that the guards and the overseer have infrared goggles on. And Han realizes that, yes, it is super cold down here. It's hard to breathe. And it is pitch black. It is kept pitch black because, like I said earlier, glitter stem is activated by light. So there is absolutely no light down there. They keep it that way. That way they can harvest more glitter stem and not like more pure glitter stem. So they're on this transport area and there's this person that's really excited, like walking up towards them. And the guard's like yelling at him like, hey, you get down, pulls up his weapon. And this person's just like, I belong here. And the guy was just like, oh, okay. And this person comes up to Han and Chewie and sits by them. Right before it gets dark, Han sees this person coming at them. He's worried that somebody that's going to attack them. And then this person starts talking to him. He's like, are you guys really from space? Are you guys really from not this planet? He's like, is it true that the Empire has fallen? And Han's just like, this kid sounds like a kid. Like, this sounds like a teenager. And he was like, yeah, the Empire has fallen. Yeah, we're from out there. And he was like, are you sure? He was like, kid, I was there. And so this kid's super excited talking with them and is helping them navigate their new life of being in these mines. And he tells them his name is Kip. And Kip was the child of two political prisoners. These two political prisoners, they were taken from their home planet along with their two children, Kip and his brother. And they were taken to Kessel. His brother was old enough to be taken to the Imperial Academy. So he was taken to the Imperial Academy to be trained as a stormtrooper. And it was never seen again. And Kip's mom and dad and Kip were taken to Kessel and were forced to mine. And his parents were killed within these mines by guards, and because they're trying to build up like a resistance to what was going on, and they were killed. So Kip's the only one left. And Kip was just explaining to Han kind of like his backstory, and Han is explaining to him like what's been going on in the outside years, because nobody has been in contact with Kessel for 7 years. I don't think I mentioned that. It's been 7 years. So he's trying to explain to everything that's happened. Kip has lost all track of time. So he's just like, wow, I don't even know how many years that, like, what is that? But he's going to tell them, he's like, don't worry, you guys are with me. I'm going to show you guys the ropes. And then in chapter 8, we go to Luke on Eel Shaw. Luke has been sequestered into this storage container that Gantoris put him in. And Gantoris told him that this is where one of the children used to live. Trying to make Luke feel bad, except Luke's like, I didn't put that kid in there. He's like, okay. He's like, I understand, whatever. He goes into his meditative state instead of sleeping, and then Gantoris leads him out, and Gantoris tells him, we need to find food. So Luke's like, okay, lead the way. And the way they're going to be looking for food is Gantoris has a little timetable of geysers that he pulls out, and they've mapped out where the geysers are and what order and frequency they explode in. So he waits for one to go off and then stop. And then once it stops, he climbs down into the geyser, and he tells Luke to follow him. And he gives him a bag and this little like scrapey tool. Not really a knife, more like a palette scraper or paint scraper. And they get these like fungus type things off of the wall. They're in these little crevices, and Gantoris tells them this is food. They need this. If they do not get this, the villagers will starve. And so he's like, okay. And Luke is following him around, and then Luke tells him, he's like, should we split up? He's like, probably find more if we split up. So Gantoris tells him how to find them, and then they split up. And then after Luke fills up his little baggie full of all of this fungi, he can't find Gantoris. So he goes back to where he was and where he thought he would be. And he looks up one of the geysers and sees Gantoris standing at the top, just kind of looking down. So Luke is just like, damn it. He realizes that Gantoris had the timetable of geyser eruptions, and that a geyser's probably going to go off. So he needs to get the hell out of there. So he starts climbing up, slips a little bit, but he's able to climb up, and he sees the geyser starting to erupt. So what he does is he calls it a cheap trick that he learned when he was training with Yoda, and is able to shoot himself out of the geyser and then land. Like, he lands and kind of rolls, and he's right there. He's with Gantoris, and Gantoris is just like, huh. He's like, all right, come with me. And so Luke's just like, okay, goes with him, and they head up a volcano. Like, there's a volcano nearby the geysers. They go up into it, and actually into the volcano. When they get in there, Luke sees the rest of the villagers up against a wall on the far side of the volcano. And in it is a pit of lava, and there's stones in the lava. So he has this pit of lava. Gantoris goes across to the other villagers, and he tells Luke, he's like, if you get across the lava, I will come with you, no questions asked. Like, and Luke's like, okay, this is odd, but okay. So Luke steps on the first stone, looks around, looks at the villagers, and is like, okay. And then he jumps on the second stone, and he's like, this may be the easiest thing that I've ever been asked to do. And so he's kind of excited. He's like, yeah, this is going to be great. I'm going to show up with my first recruit, and all I have to do is jump across these stones, across this lava. Yes. And then when he gets to this third stone, it starts to rumble a little bit, and he's just like, okay, he's trying to keep his balance. And a lava dragon comes out of the lava around the stones, and this lava dragon scales are mirrored. So it's like a lava dragon / cobra looking thing. And because its scales are completely reflective, like, it explains, like, that's how it's able to live in the lava, is because of the way the scales are. So it's up there, kind of towering over Luke, moving around, trying to eat him. And Luke pulls out his lightsaber and is trying to fight off this lava dragon, except when he hits him, because the scales are reflective and the lightsaber is an energy weapon, it reflects the lightsaber off of the dragon, and it shoots off a bolt, kind of like a blaster, and starts ricocheting off the walls, almost hits the villagers. The villagers are just very stoically standing there. There is no emotion on their faces. They're not trying to duck. They're not gasping or anything. They're just watching. And so Luke sees that this is ricocheting off after he tries to hit it a few times, and he's like, okay, this isn't going to work. He puts it back, and he doesn't really know what to do, except he hit it hard enough in one place, concentrated enough that it knocked a mirror scale off of the lava dragon's chest. So he's trying to think of how he's going to survive this, how he's going to get out of this situation. And the dragon goes down into the lava and comes back up on the other side of Luke. And Luke is like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it. He's like, if I don't do something, I'm going to die. But because he got that one scale off of its chest, the lava is able to get into that area where the scale is. So the lava goes into that, like, crack of a scale and starts to burn out the lava dragon from the inside out. And we see it's thrashing, it's dying, it's like doing this whole thing, getting lava all over the place. Luke is trying to, like, stay on the stone and not be hit by the lava. The lava gets on his robe, and so he throws it into the lava because it caught fire, and the lava dragon is dead. It sinks into the lava, and Luke is just like, whew, okay. He's like, obviously that was the test. That was a trial. And he looks at the villagers on the other side, and he's like, I just need to get there. And then he looks down. He realizes that all of the stones that were in the lava are gone. They're all gone. The only ones left are the one he's standing on. So he's just staring at the lava, looks up, stares at them, sees Gantoris staring at him, and he's just like, I need to finish this. He's like, if I don't finish this, I fail. He's like, I fail. Not only do I fail my current mission, he's like, I fail all Jedi. I am the last Jedi master. There is nobody left. Who else will start a Jedi Academy? And then he starts kind of freak out a little bit in his mind about not being good enough to start a Jedi Academy. And then he rationalizes with himself at the end that if he can get through this, if he can get to the other side, then he can do this. That he can be a Jedi master, that he can train Jedi Knights. He's like, this is the only thing that's stopping me. Right here to the edge of the lava. So he uses the Force to create a buffer between his feet and the lava. And he walks. So it looks like he's walking on top of the lava. And once he gets to the other side, he's trying not to sag with relief that he did it. He didn't think he was going to do it. Like, he thought he was going to fail. He thought he was just going to fall right in. And the villagers are super shocked. And Gantoris is excited now. Now that he realized that Luke can do the things that he thought he could, he's just like, all right, let's go. Like, he's fine with it. And Luke's like, before anything happens, I need to try something real quick before we can leave. And Gantoris is like, okay. He's like, I'm going to touch your mind. He's like, don't freak out. He's like, I just need to check something mentally. He's like, you might feel my presence on your mind, but it'll be fine. And so he does his whole little mind touchy thing and finds the little nub at the back of Gantoris's head, and he touches it, and he's knocked into the wall of the volcano. Gantoris is like, oh no. He's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. And Luke's just like, everything's fine. Everything's fine. I just needed to check something. And so Gantoris is excited. Luke's excited. Luke tells Gantoris that he will tell Leia that they need to relocate his village. He's like, this planet is not safe for you guys. We need to get you guys off of this planet. He's like, so I'm going to tell Leia that when we get back. And he's like, okay. He's like, that would be great. He's like, to think that my people would not have to suffer just to survive would be amazing. And so he tells Gantoris, he's like, but before we get back to that planet, he's like, I need to go over here and I need to meet somebody. And Gantoris is like, okay. Like, once Luke did that and went across the thing, he's just like, yes, sir, to Luke. He's like, yes, sir. He's like, whatever you say. And then chapter 9, my favorite chapter. So chapter 9 is Lando arrives on Amgul. And so the way that they arrive on Amgul, and it's kind of like an amusement park. Once you land your ship there, there's all this information about the blob races, and there's signs to concession stands and gift shops and amusements, and there's like a map there, and there's all of these Amgulians trying to sell different blobs for different purposes. One says you can eat them. The other says this will make a great pet. The other one says you rub it on your face, you will look young forever. And they're all trying to sell blobs to Lando. They all look the same. They're just all trying to like force this on Lando. So Lando, 3PO, and R2, they make their way towards the arena which these blob races are conducted at. The blob races happen every day. This is the main source of the economy for this whole planet are these blob races. And happens in this giant arena. So they make their way towards this arena and they get to a seat, and in the seat there's this screen that's there, and it tells them what the blob races are scheduled for the day, the information on the blobs, and like what the current betting is for the blobs. So if you want to place a bet, you need to do this here, and it flashes in different languages for everybody around. And so Lando tells R2, he's like, I need you to hack into this and see where our person is hiding. The person that they're searching for, his name is Timo. Timo is, the way they found him was R2 noticed that at these blob races, there was one consistent winner of every large race. Well, not every large race. Every large race that this person bet on, they won. But every small bet that this person bet on, they lost. But those were small bets. They didn't really matter as much. And when the information was presented to Lando, Lando was like, yeah, that's sus. So they're trying to find this guy, Timo. And so he has R2 go hack into the system to find out where he's seated. And while he's doing that, 3PO is just watching the races with Lando. And the race that was described in this chapter was described beautifully, and it was so great. The blob that we are rooting for is blob number 11. All of these blobs start off in a chute, like a walled off chute, and then they have these long slides that are attached to these chutes, and they're greased. All these slides are greased, so the blobs just go down, and they go down this slide, and they're shot off into the first blobstacle. And these blobstacles are different things. So the blobstacles are, like, one of them is like a linked fence, and the way that the blob races go is these blobs have to go through each of these blobstacles, and they have to reincorporate themselves. So 100% of these blobs have to make it to the end. If 100% of the blobs do not make it to the end, then it doesn't win. It doesn't count. So when they like cut themselves into two to get around a blobstacle or something like that, it has to reincorporate into one blob. And they all kind of look the same. And each of these blobs have different fluorescent parts to them. And they have a little holographic number that was inputted into them. So you can tell which blob is doing what. The one everyone is rooting for is blob 11. Blob 11 has some purple phosphorus into it, and like it has to go through this little square, like a mini chain link fence. It has to go over this wall. It has to go into this like funnel, small tunnel thing, and there's a fan that is rotating and it has to get through that. So there's all of this type of things that are happening into it. And even in the race, two blobs went through this little slide thing that was a different blobstacle. They got knocked into each other and incorporated fully into each other. So they became one giant blob. And therefore, two of them were both disqualified from the race because they're fully incorporated. And so Lando is super interested into this race, and he is like kind of leaning in, and he's like, man, I wish I placed a bet on this. And he's fantasizing about, in his off time away from the New Republic, coming back to this planet to bet on some of these races, when R2 lets him know that he found Timo. So they find Timo. Timo's in the poor seats, like this little area where the poor people are sequestered off to. And Lando, R2, and 3PO go down into this area, and they find Timo. They're a little, like, few rows back. They find Timo. He's sitting there. He has his hand in his pocket while he's sitting down, and he is leaning really close to this race. And Lando's like, that's odd. He's like, this kid doesn't look that special. And he watches him watching the race. So he's watching the race. Every time the blob that he's, I guess, rooting for starts to go through an obstacle, this kid leans in a little bit. And then he'll lean back when he's cleared the obstacle and then lean in some more. So he's really into this race. And they have the announcers talking about the blobs through the intercom system of what's going on, just, commentating on the blob race. And then in every lull of this blob race commentary, they are telling the whole audience that there is going to be a special visit from a duchess next week. And they will be having a huge blob race and blob events. That'll be on that day when this duchess appears. So everybody come on down for this blob race during this duchess visit type thing. And Lando sees that this kid, he's like really nervous. Like he's sweating a little bit and he's like, this is odd, but okay. And they see his hands in the pocket. The blob race ends. The blob that they were cheering for, number 11, wins. And when the blob wins, is in the finish circle, like Teemu doesn't relax or anything. He gets up and then you can see him moving his hand in his pocket a little bit. And then he takes his hand out of his pocket and he walks towards the cash out place. When he goes to the cash out place, Lando is able to get a little scan from him. Like he's standing behind a pillar while he sees Teemu over there. Teemu he takes a scan of it. Teemu's cashing out, and then Teemu sees that Lando is watching him after he cashes out. So Teemu's like freaking out a little bit. He's like, "Who is this person watching me?" and runs off. And 3PO and R2 are with Lando there, and they look at the scan of Teemu and they don't see anything. There's no blue there at all. And Lando's like, that's odd. And 3PO is asking him, he's like, are you sure you scanned him right? He's like, maybe you didn't scan him right. Maybe we were too far away. And Lando's like, you know what? Maybe you're right. We're going to stay here and investigate because something don't feel right here. We're going to stay here and investigate. So he has R2 track Teemu's whereabouts through all the different like little console type things, and they find out that he is at the blob stables. And Lando is just very like, this is interesting. This is very interesting. So he sends R2 to the blob stables and to impersonate a maintenance droid to kind of keep an eye on Teemu. And when he gets R2's there, and then 3PO and Lando are kind of walking up slowly. It's night now, so there's no reason for really anybody to be in the stables, let alone Teemu, who doesn't seem to be a part of the races, but he is dressed like a blob wrangler, which these words are just so great. He's dressed like a blob wrangler, and they see him at this blob cage. And when they see him there, 3PO is just like, what's going on? Lando's like, shh. We need to watch. And he's like, see, 3PO, I need you to watch him and enhance your vision to see what he's doing. He's like, can you do that for me? 3PO's like, got you. I'm on it. So does the binocular things kind of like with his eyes to see what Teemu's doing. R2's over on the other side of Teemu doing like legit maintenance things, like actually maintenance droid things. And Lando's just trying to be like speculating on what Teemu's doing. And when they see Teemu, he has the blob cage open. 3PO yells very loudly, I see him. He inputted, so he injected that blob with something. And Teemu jumps up, is scared, tries to run off, but also has a blaster out and is trying to shoot at Lando and 3PO. 3PO is freaking out a little bit, and they're both headed towards where Teemu is because the blob gate is open to that blob's pen, and Teemu's shooting at them. The blob gets scared. When the blob gets scared, the blob jumps, and it lands on 3PO. 3PO is freaking out because there's a blob on him and it's sliming all over him, gunking up his works. He is yelling for Lando to save him and get this off of him. Lando's shooting around Teemu, trying not to hurt him. He's just trying to incapacitate him. Teemu's trying to kill him. Teemu's like not messing around, but he's just a bad shot. And then R2 is still doing maintenance things while this is going on. And 3PO is like freaking out. he's got this blob sliming on him. And before Timu can run away, R2 trips him. Because Timu wasn't paying attention to him because he's like, it's just a maintenance droid. So he wasn't paying attention. He trips him. Lando gets up to him. And while he's telling him, he's like, I finally got you. Everybody else has heard the commotion of what's going on. So the governor of this whole planet, he's the one who runs the blob races. He owns all of the blobs in the blob stables. And so the whole stable area is with him. He calls the guards, everybody surrounding Timu, R2, Lando, and 3PO. And he wants to know what the hell is going on. He's ready to arrest everybody. And Lando's like, oh, I didn't say I'm part of the New Republic. Here's my official like hologram badge identification. And he's like, we were tracking Timu here, and we've tracked him all the way to your blob stables. And he's like, he's like, it was a good thing you showed up because I think he's cheating. And the governor is just super just offended by this. He's like, cheating? How dare somebody try and cheat in the blob races? He's like, do you know the standards we have here for blob races? And so Lando tells 3PO to analyze the blob that is currently sliming all over him. And 3PO is freaking out, and he's just like, get this thing off of me. He's like, I will run the analysis, get it off of me. And the governor is able to coax the blob up there. He's like, you scared it, stop moving. And the blob comes off of it, mostly. He's still got the slime all over 3PO, but he pulls the blob off of him, and he's just talking to it like a pet. Like you would, you know, like if I was holding my chunky cat, Steve, and I'm like, oh, it's okay, Steve, and just like kind of baby talking to it a little bit, takes it all the way back to its little cage and puts it in there, closes the door. And 3PO tells him, he analyzed it, and he lets him know that there was foreign material in the blob and that it came off with the slime when the blob came onto him. Pulls it up, and it's a little microchip, not microchip, but a little chip thing. And Lando's like, haha, I knew it. He's cheating. And the governor tells Lando and Timu that the punishment for cheating in an Umgulian blob race is death. No questions asked, just death. So he was like, he will be put to death right away. And Timu starts freaking out. We find out that Timu's real name is Dak. So Timu's backstory is he was poor and he didn't want to be poor anymore. And so he was trying to figure out ways to not be poor anymore and not have to fight for survival. And around this time he was doing that, there was a Duchess Mistel, on a neighboring planet from Umgul. She was trying to find her consort. So she was using these computer databases and applicants from people who are applying to be her consort, and they were going to go through this information and try and find her best match of somebody who could be her consort. And so Dak hacked the system. He applied, hacked it, and made her think through his application and his computer wizardry that he was her perfect match. He is her soulmate. So obviously she picked him to be her consort. They got married, and he figured, he was like, I'm a consort, I have to be with her just a small part of the day. She'll get sick of me, and she's like, I'll just get to live this life of luxury. Except she thinks he's her soulmate. So she is up in his Kool-Aid all day, every day. And he's like, she was everywhere, all the time, everywhere. And he's like, I couldn't get away from her, which caused me to have anxiety, caused me to have panic attacks. And she was worried about me. So she decided she needed to be more there for me. So she was obsessively in his Kool-Aid, even more than she was before. After she's trying to comfort him. And so he decided that he couldn't take it anymore and he was going to run away. And he did. He got on a ship and he came to Amgul and he changed his name to Timo. And so he got to Amgul and he's been living off of blob races. So he would place bets on small bets and would just lose the money because he's not a good gambler. And when he needed money, he would cheat. He created these little chips and he would inject them into the blob that he wanted to win. And while the blob was in the blobsticles doing the blob races, he would press a button in a remote that he had in his pocket and it would release like a chemical that would cause a flight or fight response in the blob. Except there's no fight in blobs. Blobs don't fight. They only do flight. So it would create a flight response into it. And so it was literally feeling like it was like running or it was going to die. And that's how he would give it the extra like oomph to finish the race first. And then once it finished the race, he'd press another button on the remote and there'd be a little poof explosion that would destroy the chip. And there would be trace amounts of things like copper and some other materials that would be left over from the chip, except the amounts were so small and negligible that they were the people who I guess inspectors, the blob inspectors, they would test the blobs before to see if they had anything they're not supposed to have in their slimes, like chemicals and stuff, but they didn't look specifically for this chip because he disguised it in their little hologram numbers. And they would check afterwards, but the amount of chemicals or things that were in the blob were so negligible that they thought it was picked up from the blobsticles. And so it was never reported. Lando had R2-D2 go back through all of the blobs in the races that Timo won and checked for these same chemicals and these same materials and found them there in every single one of them. So he presented this information to the governor and the governor's just like, I'm going to kill him. He's like, how dare he cheat in these blob races? He made a mockery of our whole planet. And Lando's just like, hold on now. Let's just calm down. He's like, did you know that the Duchess Mistel has been missing her consort so terribly? So much that she has $1 million bounty on Dak for his safe arrival. He's like, imagine 1 million credits. He's like, what half of that, because I deserve half, obviously, would do for your economy. Not to mention giving the Duchess her consort back would do for the political relations between your planet. He's like, could you just imagine that? And the governor's like, well, you're talking some sense. He's like, but we'll leave it up to Dak. Dak can pick death for cheating or going back to the Duchess. And Dak chooses to live because he's a coward. And he's just like, please just live, give me some time before you give me back to her. And so he's like, all right. And then the governor tells him that when he receives the bounty, he's like, I'll give you half of it. And he kind of gives that to him in advance. Gives him half of the 1 million credits because he's just like, I'll take your half from the bounty when we give Dak back to the Duchess. I'll give this to you now. So Lando's like, I am rolling in the money again. He's like, this is great. I am back on top. He's like, you know what? I'm going to go back to Umgul and bet on some of these races. And he's like, and then he's like, well, also, what am I going to do my next investing in? Because the last thing he was doing, he lost in a card game. So he's just like, what else am I going to do? Let's just do something else. So he heads back to the planet where Leia's at. And on chapter 10, we head back to the planet where Leia is at, and Leia, she is super excited. Her children are returning to her that day. She is so excited and at the same time so pissed off because Han hasn't responded to her since he got to Kessel, or even before he got to Kessel. He has not let her know he's at Kessel. He's not let her know anything that's going on. She assumes that he started drinking and hanging out with old people that he knew back from the olden days and just forgot to contact her. So she is super pissed off. She's like, I'm going to kill him when I see him again. She's like, I'm going to kill him. But she's super happy that her children are showing back. But at the same time, she's really mad at Han. And then she's getting a little worried. She's like, he should have, right? He should have let me know he's fine by now. And she meets the twins again. She's like, yay, my twins are here. She's able to talk with her servant Winter as well. And Winter's like, where's Han? And she's just like, I don't know. She's like, I think she tells Winter what's going on. And she's like, I'm pretty sure he's just drunk off of his mind somewhere. And Winter's like, so you sent Han to a different planet to be your ambassador for the New Republic. And it's been days, I think weeks at this point. He's like, and Han still hasn't contacted you back. And she's like, yeah. She's like, have you contacted Kessel? She's like, no. Why? Han's fine. And so Winter asks her, she's like, if this was any other person besides Han, she's like, what would you do? And she's like, well, I would be worried and I would have contacted Kessel and tried to figure out what happened to my team. And so Winter's like, so why aren't you doing that? She's like, is it just because it's Han? She's like, are you so like, are you okay? And Leia she was so worried that something was going to happen to Han that she just convinced herself that he was off just getting drunk and playing and gambling and that he just forgot. So she finally realizes that she's like, all right, I have been stupid. I need to launch an investigation. So she actually calls up Kessel, and it takes her a very long time to get a hold of Duel because she contacts Kessel. Nobody's contacted Kessel in so many years that they don't really know what to do. And she finally gets a hold of Duel. And she's like, hey, she's like, my name is Leia. She's like, she introduces herself. She's like, I am a senator with the New Republic. We are trying to set up some communications with the further reaching planets and this. And she was like, and before she can ask about Han, Duel starts getting super sus. And he's like, oh, that's great. The New Republic. That is so awesome. We don't know anything about what's going on. We just heard that there's a New Republic and that the Empire fell down. And that's so great. And no, we have not heard of anything from anybody ever. And she's like, okay. She's like, well, I sent an ambassador there. And she's like, oh, no, we have not seen an ambassador here. Anybody, like, especially like Han? No, we have not seen any. There has been no contact here. And before she can start to ask questions, he's already throwing answers at her on why the things haven't happened. And she's even like, I'm trying not to judge the physicalness of alien species because she's like, I don't really know what's going on. She's like, I can't judge them based on human standards. And so she's like, maybe this is just how they look. She's like, but what he's saying is very odd. And so she's starting to be like, okay. After they get off the phone, she tells him that she'll send an ambassador there and everything. He's like, I'm looking forward to it. And she gets off of the communications and she's like, yeah, something is really wrong. Something is very, very wrong. And then on chapter 11 is the same day, and we go back to Han on Kessel. Han has lost his temper. He realized that day is the day that his children were showing back up and that he missed it because he was kept prisoner in a mine. So he attacks the nearest guard to him, which causes a whole riot. And everybody is locked up after they're fought off. And Han and Chewie are going to be punished by being sent into the deepest part of the mine. In the deepest part of the mines, people have been going missing. Prisoners, guards, overseers, it doesn't matter. People have been going missing in these mines when they get to the deepest part. But the deepest part gives the purest glitter stem. So Han is there. The overseer tells Han that he's going to be going down there. And then he looks at the rest of the prisoners and he is like, I need 3 people to go with him. Chewie obviously stands up and is going to go with Han. Kip's like, I'll go. And they just pick a random person to be the 3rd person who's trying to fight him off. So those 4 are being sent. 4 are being sent with a guard and an overseer down into the deepest part of these mines. And Han is thinking that they can escape. He was like, if nobody is seeing what is happening to these prisoners or these guards, these overseers or something, he's like, maybe there's a way out. He was like, we're going to go deep into those mines in that area and see if there's a way out. They get down into these deep mines. The overseer is using a scanner and his infrared goggles to see that there's glitter stem all over the place. The concentrations are off the charts. And they keep going deeper into these mines, and he's telling Han and everybody that, is like, this is going to be great. We're going to start working down here, et cetera, et cetera. And then when they get super far into these mines, the 3rd guy who did not want to be there is attacked. And the overseer and the guard are the only 2 with infrared goggles. And they see the person being taken up and attacked. They start freaking out, and then Han realizes they're freaking out. He's telling Chewie and Kip to run back towards the cart. The overseer is further ahead than the guard is. The guard is bringing up the rear. The overseer was by the first guy, doing scans and stuff. The overseer is attacked. He's screaming. Han grabs the infrared goggles because the overseer went down right beside him, is trying to grab at him. Han grabs the goggles, puts them on, can't see what's attacking anybody. All he can see is the infrared body being attacked and being held up, and the warmth being siphoned out of it by something. So he's freaking out. He's yelling at them to run and trying to kind of guide them to go back to where the mining car is. And the guard is running out to them, just firing off into just everywhere. And so the guard is also attacked because Han swings behind him. So Han, Kip, and Chewie are on the mining cart. The guard is attacked by the thing that killed the other 2, and they just kind of throw it into reverse and head back to where they came from. And Han's freaking out. He's like, I thought there was a way out. Chewie's calling him stupid, and Kip's just like, what happened? And they're just like, we don't know. And then they hear the thing coming at them. So while this is happening down in the mine, Duel is on top of the mine. He just finished his conversation with Leia. He's super excited. He's like, I fooled her. I am the bestest at this. And he's like, I got this. Everything is going to be fine. And so, but to calm himself down, he goes into the area where they pack the glitter stem. Where they pack the glitter stem, it's pitch black. And what I forgot to mention earlier is Duel has a harem. So when Han first met him, Han knows the species that Duel is. And it's like a frog-like species. And Duel was wearing a bright yellow vest jacket thing, which is something traditionally worn with that species when it's about their mating time. And Han was just like, I don't think he's going to be finding any females of his species here. And once they were taken off to go into the mines, Duel put some mucus on himself, straightened out his jacket, opened up a false wall, and went down into this area where he keeps his harem. So when he took over the prison and he started buying up all these ships, he also spent a lot of credits to buy the female of his species, and he bought a lot of them. And so he keeps them locked in cells in a false wall kind of off of his office. And the babies from this are larvae, because that's the way his species are. They're eggs and then they're larvae before they get bigger and they start to kind of turn into what he is. So in this area where he has them, where they package the glitter stem to get ready to be shipped out, he uses the larva from his harem, from his slaves. And they blindly package the spice, and he sees them, and he's just walking along, sees them. One of them is starting to change from a larva into a pupa. And so it's getting a little aggressive. It's starting to puff up at him. And so he's like, oh, it's about time to kill that one. And he kills off the larva before they become pupa and then before they're fully grown. So he has nobody in his species that are trying to challenge him. And that's how he packs the glitter stem. So he walks around and watches them package the things and checks on them. And that's how he kind of calms down. And so he does that. And I'm just like, wow, Duel, you're just a piece of shit. Like, ugh. So he's doing that and just so proud of himself for it, while Han and Kip and Chewie are traveling back to where the other area of the mines are, like the community area after everybody was killed. But that thing is starting to chase them. So they're freaking out a little bit. And then chapter 12. So Luke and Gantoris, the planet they headed to was Bespin. So while they're headed there, Luke teaches Gantoris some Jedi exercises, some meditations, and just some light Jedi training. And when they get to Bespin, Luke tells Gantoris that they're waiting for a man named Streen. And they just pull up to this like abandoned city, and they just park their vehicle there. They bring out some like camping stuff, and they're just like, yep, we're just going to wait here for him. And Gantoris doesn't really know why, and Luke tells him that he's a possible recruit. And so Streen shows up, and he has met Luke before. He's talked with Luke before. They had some interactions, and Luke tells him that he thinks that he could be trained as a Jedi, and that Luke wants to train him as a Jedi if he will come with them. Streen tells Luke that he doesn't know if he wants to be a Jedi, but he asks Luke if he can be taught to shut out the voices. Because Streen, when he's around people, can hear the thoughts and the feelings of everybody around him. And he can't shut them out. So he doesn't live around people. And that's why he scavenges at the edge and sells off what he scavenges to survive, but he stays away from people. And he says he's very lonely. He would love to be a part of a society and a civilization, but he can't stand the voices in his head. He said they drive him crazy. And he asks Luke, can you have the voices stop? And Luke tells him, yes, I can help with that. So he's like, all right, then I will come with you. So he unhooks his boat, like he takes a bag of his stuff off of it, unhooks it, and just lets it float off into the area, because it's a floating city. And so Gantoris is excited to have him there. Luke's excited to have him there. And as they get off to fly off of Bespin, these type of creatures that are around, they're kind of like hawk, crow type of creatures, all do this amazing display. And Streen tells them that those were his only friends since he's been living there. And before they get on the ship, Luke does the whole mental thing, the little nubby nub, and gets thrown across, just like he did with Gantoris. So he's like, yes, you can definitely come with us. I will definitely show you how to teach you how to stop the voices so you can be a part of a society. So they're headed back to Coruscant. I keep thinking of croissants. Back to where Leia is at. So chapter 13, we head back to Kessel. And so after Duel did his little calming, soothing, creepy, gross thing to where he watches his larva from his slaves package the glitter stem that he has prisoners mine, he realizes that he can't keep Han and Chewie because Leia said that she was going to be sending another ambassador. So he's like, what if they find out that Han's here? What if they find out that Chewie's here? He's like, they're going to take my planet from me. They're going to take Kessel away from me. I can't let that happen. Can't. Not today. We're not letting that happen. So he gets a hold of Skynex and tells him that he needs to kill Han and Chewie and get rid of their bodies somewhere really far away or either really deep into the mines. And Skynex is super excited. He's wanted to kill Han since he saw Han on the Millennium Falcon, like being shot down. So he heads down towards the mines where Han and Chewie are at. And he shows up right as Han, Chewie, and Kip show back up in the mining cart. And he pulls out his blaster and just starts shooting. And he's just trying to kill Han. And so they're getting shot at. Han is just like, damn it. And like they all duck and they start the thing back and they're going back towards the mine. And Skynex and his men, they jump on another cart behind him and they start following him, shooting at him. Han has no weapons. He just has some infrared goggles, and that's kind of it. Chewie has no weapons. Chewie and Kip are blind and have no weapons. And so they're trying to just kind of be like, we don't know what to do. They're getting shot at. And Han realizes that the place they're going are the last coordinates that were inputted into the mining cart, which is the area where everybody was killed. And he's like, we do not want to go there. I don't want to go there. And then Kip tells him that there should be a turn up ahead. So Han's trying to figure out how to navigate this thing. So they turn off. And as they're turning off from the way that they were going, this giant spider, like a giant glass crystal spider with 100 legs, comes out. The monster thing that's been killing all of these things is also the thing that creates the glitter stem. The glitter stem is its web. There are these giant light creatures that's kind of like deep sea. You know, you get the bioluminescent type creatures down there. So they have these giant bioluminescent, Kip calls them leviathans. They're these huge giant worm looking things, and they just kind of float. And they just float on, just like jellyfish, down into these mines. And they're more on the top mines. There's some on the deeper mines. So these glitter stem spider monsters, I don't even know if it's described as a spider with 100 legs, but I'm just thinking of like either it's like a main spider body with a giant bunch of legs, but all of these legs are like crystal glass spears. I'm thinking more of a centipede, but it's just this weird monster thing. It creates glitter stem as a web. The glitter stem is activated when the light from the bioluminescent leviathan worms show up, and it gets caught in the web, and the spider things jump on them, and it eats their light and their warmth. And that's how it feeds. And that's why Han can't see it in the infrared goggles, because it doesn't have any body heat or anything like that. And so once they turn, it comes out from this part that they were in and starts attacking Skynex and his guys right here. While Skynex is still trying to shoot them, he turns off to where Han is, and they're just kind of trying to navigate these areas, and they're able to find this one area with Kip's help. While this thing is getting to it, they shoot out of off of the rails into an area that breaks out of the mines, and they're on top of Kessel now. And Skynex follows them, except he's too busy trying to shoot off this giant spider thing now that's still trying to get to him. He's the only one left. And as they shoot out, and he is eaten. The thing catches up to him and he is eaten. Han, Luke, and Kip, they just start running. They just keep going, and they're just trying to get as far away from that as they can. And while that thing is distracted with that, Duel gets the alarm of things just shit hitting the fan. So he sends out teams to go find what's going on, and they find, like, he's trying to figure that out. And while he's doing that, Han, Kip, and Chewie are able to run, and they find a hangar off on the edge of the mining area, and they run in there, and they're just like, if we can find a ship, we can get off of Kessel. All right, Chapter 14. Chapter 14 is we go back to Luke and Leia. Luke is introducing Leia to Gantoris and Streen, and he tells her that they need help to find the location of their academy. He said especially with Streen can't be around people. So Leia puts Streen out on one of the abandoned areas where they're doing the construction, away from everybody, so he doesn't have to listen to the voices, and he'll be comfortable there. And she's like, you can stay over there, so you're fine, you're over there. And Gantoris, she's being very polite. She notices that he's been wearing a pilot's uniform, and it looks like it has been mended 100 times and kind of added to it, and it doesn't fit him, like it's made for a smaller person. So she goes through her databases and is able to find that specific type of uniform and has it made to tailor to him and presents it to him as a present, and he is super excited with it. And Luke's trying to tell her, like, we need a location, we can't have Streen around people. And she's like, and I'm worried about Gantoris, what he said about this dark figure that he has been seeing in his dream. And he lets her know that Gantoris' tribe also needs to be located to a different planet. And she explains to her how inhospitable the planet they currently are on. And she's like, all right, I'll do it. Let's add it to the list of things. And so he's excited. He has 2 recruits. And he starts joking about Han while he's playing with the twins. And she sees that Leia's upset when he mentions up Han. And he notices that, and he's like ready to go towards her to ask her more about it, when Lando just like bursts, like full on dramatically bursts through the doors, and it catches everybody off guard. The twins are freaked out a little bit by it. 3PO is trying to wrangle them in. And once Lando comes in there, he looks at Leia and he's like, when the hell were you going to tell me that Han has been missing for weeks? And so Luke's like, what? What do you mean Han has been missing? And she tells him that when she sent them to Kessel, he never reported in. And when she contacted Kessel, the person that was in charge there, Duel, told her that he never even showed up, but he was being super sus about it. So she's like, something's wrong, I don't know. She's like, can you two check? Can you go find him for me? And so they're gonna go find Han and Chewie, and she tells Luke that she's gonna find him a planet. She should be able to find that for him by the time he's back. She's going to find the planet for the refugees, and she will take care of the recruits while he goes off to find her husband. And he's like, all right. Chapter 15, we head back to Kessel. Han and Kip and Chewie are in this hangar, and they find the closest ship to them. They're going onto the ship, and they're trying to get it started and get out of there. And when they're able to start the ship, 2 guards are showing up, and they see them steal the ship. So they sound the alarm. The energy shield around the planet is finally finished, and it is being activated. And they're able to get out into the atmosphere right before it's activated. And the ship that the guards jumped in to chase after them is hit in the field and explodes. So they're out in the atmosphere. Chewie and Han are just like, we're fine, we're gonna make it. They realize that there is no navigation unit on this shuttle. And there are no weapons because it is a shuttle. It is not anything that was supposed to have weapons on it at all. So they're trying to fly through in this shuttle ship. They start seeing X-Wings and TIE fighters and all different types of ships that are being sent out by Duel, because Duel's like, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him. And so they're like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Chewie is using the systems to put all of the power in, all of the power into the shields, and he's like, they're like, 2 more hits and we're dead. We're dead. And so Kip tells them to fly into the Maw. So Kessel is by a place called the Maw. The Maw is a cluster of black holes. Like, just a cluster of black holes. Anybody that gets near it gets sucked into the black holes, like, orbit and dies. So Kip tells him, he's like, go in there, I can help navigate. And Han is just like, I don't know if this will work. But while they were talking and everything, they find out that Kip, well, before they started getting chased, they found out that Kip he is able to use the Force. When he was a child, there was a Jedi that was taken to the prison, and she taught him some things. Like, she taught him how to touch the Force, how to feel the Force, how to use the Force a little bit, and she also taught him the Jedi mind trick. And so he's like, I can navigate through the black holes. So they enter the Maw. Han, Chewie, they just take that shuttle right into the Maw, into these cluster of black holes. And then chapter 16, we go back to Leia. Leia shows Gantoris the planet that she has selected for his village. He is super excited, very grateful to her and Luke, and she tells him that General Wedge is going to be in charge of transporting his village and making sure that they get relocated and taken care of. And then she goes to visit Streen. Streen tells her that he can't be around people because of the voices. And she asks him if it's okay that she's there and that her children are there, because she's like, her children are there, so she takes them everywhere. And he tells her that children's minds are very simple. He's like, they're not chaotic, they're not backstabbing, they're fine. And he tells Leia that she has that her mind is very quiet. He's like, that's weird. He's like, I've never been around a mind like yours. And she says that, yeah, Luke's been training me, so my mind's a little bit different from other people's. And he asks her for some validation that Luke will be able to help him. He said that he really wants to be around people. He really wants to be a part of a society, to have a job, to be around people, to have friends. And he said he really needs that in his life, and he can't have it because of all the voices. And she reassures him that yes, that Luke can probably teach you that. Everything's going to be fine. And then during this time as well, Winter leaves right before they get back. So the twins see Winter leaving, and Winter tells Leia that she's like, I gotta go. She's like, I still have Anakin to go watch over on this other planet for the next year and a half. And Leia's freaking out. She's like, what am I going to do without you here? And she's like, you're going to be a mom to your kids. You'll be fine. And 3PO is like, he's like, I got this. It's fine. It's going to be fine. I downloaded all of these stories, all of these lullabies. And he's like, it'll be okay. And the twins realize that Winter is gone, and like toddlers do, they start throwing a fit. So the rest of the chapter is them throwing all of these fits, and Leia and 3PO kind of freaking out about it. And then chapter 17, we go back to Han and Kip and Chewie, and they're in the Maw. So Kip is at the controls of this shuttle. He has his eyes closed. He's just feeling the Force, and he is navigating them around these black holes so they don't get sucked in. And Han and Chewie are like kind of freaking out, but they're like, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. And they're in awe that they're not dead yet. And when they're traveling through this, finally Kip's like, we're at a safe space. We're in the middle. And they're all just kind of really calm. They're like, whew. And then they look up and they see 4 Star Destroyers and a bunch of TIE fighters just right in front of them, right in front of their window. They receive a communication from someone called Admiral Dalla, who comes through the comms and asks for their security code because the shuttle they're in is an Imperial shuttle ship. So she's asking for their security code to be able to dock on them. Han tells them that he tells them like a fake security code, and she's like, that's wrong. And he's like, well, that's the one I was given. While he's still freaking out, wondering, what the hell are 4 Star Destroyers and a bunch of TIE fighters just in the middle of the mall for? And so because they're not able to give the correct security code, they're put into a tractor beam and are escorted back into one of the Star Destroyers to be taken prisoner. Chapter 18, we go to Luke and Lando. They get to Kessel and they decide on a backstory of Lando is a rich person who's looking for a new investment, which is true now. And Luke is his right-hand man who kind of handles the more technical side of it. And he's going to be helping him look for a new investment opportunity. They heard of the Glitterstim mines and found out that Duel's in charge, and they just want to take a look around and see if this is going to be a good partnership for them. Duel is super excited. He's like, yes, bring your money here. I love it. Everything. We'll be great partners. And he starts showing him around the mine, starts showing him like his operation, just kind of like showing him around. And while he's showing them around, Luke is using the Force to try and feel Han and Chewie, but he can't. And he's starting to freak out that they're not there. He was like, were they here and they were killed? Or did they never show up? And so he has no idea what's going on. And Duel is just happily taking them around, happily showing them the mines. He shows them the larvae things, packaging the glitter stem, and explaining to them how profitable the mine could be. And he has them on like a little shuttle type thing, just driving them around the planet. And they see one of the creatures the creature that killed Skynet X, and it's dead. And they're like, what is that? And he tells him, he's like, oh, that's our newest find. We found out that's where Glitterstim comes from. We haven't named it yet, but we have a zoologist that we're going to ship it off to, and it's going to be fine. And they're just going on this grand tour. Luke can't sense Han, and he's telling Lando, he's like, I don't feel him. So they're just going through this whole tour. And chapter 19, we head into the middle of the mall with Admiral Dalla. Admiral Dalla interrogates Han, and he tells her that, like, he's not really trying to hide anything from her. He tells her that the Empire has fallen and the Emperor's dead. And she's like, you're a liar. And he's like, no. So she puts him through all of the Imperial torture devices to find out the truth, because she's like, well, we haven't been contacted in 7 years. She's like, She would send out communication droids outside of the mall that would send off a signal to the Empire and then would self-destruct. And they never received anything back. And she finds out now that, yes, it is true. The Empire has fallen. The Emperor's dead. Her mentor, Grand Moff Tarkin, is also dead. And she doesn't really know how to process this. Like, she's just in shock. And she didn't know that the Death Star was a thing. Like it was built and it was being used. She did not know that. And so when she found out from Han that the Death Star was destroyed, she was just like, she physically like threw herself back into it. She's like, you liar. And he was like, no, we got the Death Star. And she's like, well, how is the Death Star destroyed? He explains that there was a design flaw, and they use that to destroy it flaw. And she's already thinking of logistically, like, what can we do to rectify the design flaw? She's like, I'm going to have him tell me what the design flaw is, and then we're going to redo it, and it'll be fine. And he was like, well, it was already fixed in the second Death Star. And she's like, second Death Star? And he's like, yeah. He's like, it was the second Death Star, and then we destroyed that too, and then that killed everybody else. And so he's relaying all the information of what happened in like the movies to her, and she is just dumbfounded. She is like, she gets back from the interrogation back to her quarters, and she's just like ready to just kind of fall over. She doesn't know what to do. She's like, this is why we haven't been contacted in so many years. She's like, this is why, like, she's trying, it's like she's falling into a depression into it. And then she decides, no. Like, she's like, so my fleet is the last remaining fleet in the Empire. She's like, so I'm going to take my fleet, I'm going to take my forces, and I'm going to do what I was trained to do, what I was taught to do, what Grand Moff Tarkin thought I was capable of doing, and I'm going to destroy the New Republic. And so that's what she decides. She decides, like, I'm going to destroy the New Republic. What Grand Moff Tarkin had done was he promoted her to Admiral, and he put her in charge of this. This is called the Maw installation. And her job was to protect the scientists at this Maw installation. So he had a group of scientists that would, like his R&D department, they would come up with research and build practical uses for weapons, and then would send out these plans to him, and he would tell the Emperor, I came up with this new thing, and here's how we build it. And so, and then that's how the Death Star came about and everything. So that's kind of what her job was to protect these scientists so they can do their job, and to be a battle ready fleet for when the need ever arose. So she's like, okay. She was like, I just realized that the whole empire was taken down. We are the last standing imperial fleet. We are going to take down the New Republic. And she's like, and I have just the weapon to do it. And so she goes to the scientists and tell the head scientists and tell them that the latest weapon that they were supposed to be building, she's like, I need it ready as soon as possible. And she tells him what had happened with the Empire, and he's just like, no. And she's like, yeah, so you will build this as soon as possible. And then chapter 20, we head back to Leia, and the Cardian ambassador shows up, is super rude to Leia. He has stormtroopers with him, and she is just surprised by the insensitivity of this man. And he is super rude. He just wants to be taken to the Emperor's palace and shown these like landmarks and everything. And they have a whole dinner set up in these gardens that he should be attending to. He is so paranoid and so much telling her that she's rebel scum so much that he has 2 little flasks on the side of his belt where he gets his drinks from. So he doesn't have to worry about being poisoned by her. And all of the hors d'oeuvres and things are checked by his stormtroopers before they get to him, so he's not getting poisoned. Percy, will you leave him alone? I don't know what is going on with Percy, but she just decided that Kane cannot be around her, but she's all up in his Kool-Aid. And then she's just like slapping at him. A poor dog is like 15 times her size, and he's just walking away cowering from her. Anyways, they're doing this whole party. She's trying to be nice to him. He's just being a dick. And towards the end of the party, he goes up and he's like, I would like to propose a toast. And she's like, oh, that's nice of him. And he was walking around doing this toast, praising the Empire, and then throws his drink in Mon Mothma's face because she's there because it's a political party. So all the political people are there. Tells him that he looks forward to the Empire destroying and killing all of them. Turns around, takes his stormtroopers, and leaves. And everybody's really shocked about what's going on. The twins are around also causing havoc to 3PO. And she's shocked and she's like, oh my God, this could be the start of a war, but he leaves. And then chapter 21 is we are going back to Han. Han is taken to a different room when he doesn't know really where he's at. He meets a scientist called Kui Zhu, and she is an alien species that's more bird-like and also has iridescent, like, feathery things, like, described very prettily. And she designed the original Death Star. And she questions Han about what's going on, about what happened to the Death Star. He tells her that it blew up. And she's like, what? And he was like, it was a design flaw. And she starts freaking out and everything and tells her about the second Death Star. And she just wants to know all this information. She wants to know how well it worked, what it felt like to be inside. She wants to know the tactile feels of these things. And he's telling her, he's like, why would you care about how these death machines were? And she turns her little capsule at the bottom of the ship around. So she was like, she's like, it's that. And he looks out and he sees the frame of a Death Star with the working weapon components in there. And he's just like, what is that? And she was like, well, that's the Death Star. Like, obviously, without all of the superfluous things, since we don't have a crew in there, we don't need the sleeping quarters or anything. She's like, this is just a weapon in the frame. And he's like, is it functional? And she's like, of course. She's like, we've tested it here. She's like, we built this, and these were the plans that we sent off to the Empire. And he is just aghast. Like, he's just like, do you not understand the amount of destruction that these creations of yours have caused? And she's like, no, it wasn't about destruction. She's like, really? She's like, she's starting to tell him that she's like, this was created so that, dead planets can be destroyed, and this other creation was created to take planets and other things and break them down to resources that can be used in construction and stuff. He starts laughing hysterically, telling her that she is stupidly naive and that no, all of her inventions were to kill, and describes like the destruction of Alderaan, describes what had happened to all of these planets and these people. And he notices she's like a child when he's telling her this. It's like he's yelling at her. She's just kind of becoming smaller. And then after a while, he's just like, I'm sorry. And she's just like, well, no. She's like, they don't do these things. and then after a minute, she tells him about the Sun Destroyer. And she's like, this is my newest invention. She's like, do you want to hear about it? And he was just like, sure, why not? Like, he's already been beaten. He's handcuffed. He's just like, whatever. And it says, one small impervious craft launches a modulated resonance projectile into a star, which triggers a chain reaction in the core, igniting a supernova, even in low mass stars. And she tells him this, and he's just like, are you kidding me? And she's like, and those are the plans you have? And she's like, well, yeah. She's like, I already built one. In chapter 22, we head back to Kessel with Luke and Lando, who are still going around Kessel. They're still with Duel. They go to one of the hangars because that's the next part on one of their little tour, and Lando sees the Millennium Falcon, and he's just like nudges Luke. They fall back a little bit. They're like, hang on, Duel, I just need to talk to my guy for a bit. He tells Luke that that's the Millennium Falcon. That's it. And Luke's like, how do you know? And he's like, I own that ship. That's definitely it. So they decide that they're going to double check that it was Han's, and that's actually the Millennium Falcon. So they're like, so everything's looking great right now. Everything's looking great. I think this could be a fine investment to have. And he was like, but I think we need to inspect one of these ships. And Duel's like, well, all of these ships are functional. He's like, if you want to inspect a ship, we can inspect this one over here. And he's like, how do I know that one's not a plant? How do I know that one ship is good and the rest of these are all just for show? He's like, so I'm going to randomly pick that one. And it was the Millennium Falcon. And Duel is a little like shook by it, but he's like, all right, it's fine. They go on to the ship and they open up the smugglers things on it and all the changes that Han has made to it and Lando has made to it, and they're like, yeah, this is definitely the Millennium Falcon. So Luke and Lando are like, yeah, something happened to Han and Chewie. So guards are getting suspicious of them, and they decide to take off in the Millennium Falcon. And once they take off, Duel is like, I knew it, they're from the New Republic. He calls up everybody to get into the fleet and to go chase them, to go shoot them down. And they take off out of the atmosphere. They barely make it before the energy field closes and starts taking down all of the rest of the ships. Chapter 23, we find out Quee's backstory. So Quee was taken by Grand Moff Tarkin from her home planet with a bunch of other children from her species. Grand Moff Tarkin had taken these children because he found out from other scientists and researchers that they have a great mental capacity. Their mental capacity was more so than humans, and they could be, if they were trained and given certain things, it could possibly unleash like the limits of their minds, and that could be great things for him. So what he had decided to do was take a bunch of these children and put them through these rigorous tests and training and chemical enhancements. And when one of them would fail, he would destroy that area of the planet that child came from. So when Quee was there with the other children, they would go through these tests and everything, and one of them would fail. They would all have to stand in front of this giant window and then see part of the planet that was destroyed. So she worked so hard to keep her part of the planet there, to not be destroyed. And so she was the only one left. So when she graduated the program, Grand Moff Tarkin took her and put her in the Maw installation. And he told her that her job was to create, was to engineer, was to do these program things. And there was going to be no limits to what she could do. And so that's what she did. And she said, realistically, she understood that her creations were made to be used to destroy and kill things. But because of the training she went through and how she was raised up like this, she compartmentalized and rationalized that these things were going to be used for like construction purposes and to help society and everything, even though she knew that it's called the Death Star, it's called the Star Destroyer, it's called the Sun Crusher. She's like, I'm not stupid. And so when Han was telling her all of these things, she hacked into Admiral Dalla's systems, which she called laughingly easy to do. She hacked into it, got all of Han Solo's interrogation, realized that she got a scrubbed version. She got a censored version of the interrogation, which pissed her off because she was just like, information is supposed to flow freely in the Maw installation. That's one of the main tenets of being here, is that I would get information freely. And so she's upset that Dalla kept all of this hidden from her. Realizes, yeah, the Emperor's gone. The Empire's gone. Tarkin's dead. And so she's kind of freaking out. She's like, all right, there's going to be some decisions that need to be made. And while she's like, after she's finished like doing all of this hacking and everything, she gets summoned to Dalla's office. She goes to Admiral Dalla's office, and Admiral Dalla is like, the Sun Crusher. She's like, I need it functional as soon as possible. And Quee is like, okay. What Quee doesn't tell her is that it's been functional for like the past 2 years. She's been telling her boss that it's been ready. It's been ready. He just hasn't been paying attention because there's been no contact from the outside world for 7 years. So he just takes her reports and just kind of files them as read, even though he's never read them, to the point where she stopped writing new reports and just sent him the same report like every week for the past 2 years. So Dala is just like, I need this functional. She's like, how long do you need for it to be functional? And Kui's like, I don't really know. And so Dala gives orders, and she has like printout paper orders that Kui can have all the resources that are available to her and with anything that she needs to be able to create the Sun Crusher and make it functional, and sends her on her way. She's like, get it ready as soon as possible. We're mobilizing. And so chapter 24, Leia is trying to find a planet for Luke. She's feeling a little burnt out from all of the political things, and then the children, and then worrying about Han and all of this stuff, and while taking care of Gantoris and Streen as well. And her twins got sick. So they're sick. She is staying home. She's working remotely. And Mon Mothma shows up to kind of give her support and to tell her that it's fine, that the ambassador of that ambassador is like, it's fine, we're not going to start a war over this, we're just hope that he sees the light soon, blah blah blah. And people keep contacting Leia to the point where Mon Mothma's like, I'm surprised you have time to do anything at all. Like, anytime that there's a call, she answers it, puts it down, there's another one, answers, puts it down, another one. Like, that's kind of how it's been. And so somebody's like yelling at her during one of these communications, saying that she should have been there at this one meeting, and that they won't be able to complete the thing that they need to complete because she's not there. And she's just like, it's fine, I'm here with my children. And this guy's like, well, if you weren't playing nurse with your children, don't you have droids for that? And like, she snaps at him just like she snapped at Luke in the beginning of the book. And Mon Mothma is there. She's just commiserating with her, and Leia tells her, she's like, he's fine. Like, their committee meets every week. Everything they're working on is not time sensitive. It's fine. She's like, I'll have the numbers to him tomorrow. It'll be okay. And she's just trying to find like a way to not be overwhelmed. And so Mon Mothma is like, it's fine, everything's okay. And then chapter 25, we go back to Han at the Maw installation. Han is in his cell, and Kui shows up with a stormtrooper and tells him that he needs to come with her. And the stormtrooper walks in to grab Han, and when he walks into the door, Kui pulls out her blaster and shoots him, kills him. So he's dead. Kui tells him that he needs to put on the stormtrooper armor and they need to leave right now. And so Han gets into the armor. He's giggling about it. He's like, this feels familiar. And they go to Kip's cell. Kip's freaking out because he found out he was scheduled for termination for that day. So he's like, how do I fight? How do I get out of here? Kui shows up to his cell with Han and another stormtrooper, because there's a stormtrooper right outside his cell. Kui's like, I need you to come in. We need this prisoner. We need to go do this thing. And when he walks in, Han shoots that stormtrooper, takes off the helmet, shows Kip that it's him. Kip's super excited and tells Kip to get into the stormtrooper armor. So they leave his cell, and Kui is like, your Wookiee is over here, so we'll need to get him. So she goes over to where Chewie is. Chewie is being watched because he's very aggressive and needs a lot of supervision. And he's upset because there's a bunch of Wookiee slaves at the Maw installation, and the Empire's always been using Wookiee slaves, so he wants to help them, but they're already all broken. Like, none of them will listen to him, and so then making him extra aggressive. So Kui shows up with Han and Kip there, and she tells the overseer person that she's like, I need that one Wookiee. And he's like, no, you don't need that one. That one's too aggressive. He's too unstable. You can't have him. I suggest taking a different Wookiee. And she's like, no, I need that one right there. And he's like, well, I don't think so. And she's like, are you questioning me? And he's like, I'm Well, no, and she shows him the papers that Dala gave her that gave her access to any and all resources available in the Maw installation. And he's like, well, okay. He's like, but he's super aggressive. I don't think maybe I should go with you. And she's like, what do you think I have these stormtroopers here for? They will keep him in line. Stop getting in my way. And so they grab Chewie. Chewie at this point is like getting extra aggressive. And when he's thinking as soon as these doors are closed, he's like, I'm going to kill these 2 stormtroopers and this little alien chick. And I'm going to go find Han and I'm going to go save him so I can stay true to my oath and it'll be fine. And so they get on the elevator and Chewie's getting super aggressive. And so Han takes off the stormtrooper helmet and he's like, Chewie! And they're reunited. Chewie almost crushes him in a hug. And Quee's telling him, she's like, you guys need to calm down. We're about to exit out of the elevator. They're like, everybody be cool. So they're pretending to escort Chewie behind Quee to go there. They're headed towards her lab. So the stormtroopers have a barcode on each one of their armor. She is ready to head into her lab area, and there's a stormtrooper there who's like, this is weird. And she shows him the papers. I need these people. And he's like, okay. He was like, I'm not questioning. I just need to scan everybody. So he scans the barcodes on their armor and the barcode on Chewie's restraints to be like, yep, they're logged. They're in here. And they go off, and she takes them to where the Sun Crusher is. And she wants to take the Sun Crusher so Dala can't have it. And chapter 26, Luke and Lando are getting shot at. They're trying to shoot back, but they realize they can't really do a jump because the navigation unit was taken out of the Millennium Falcon. So they decide they're going to go into the Maw. Luke tells Lando that he can navigate through the black holes using the Force and they'll be fine. They'll be alive. It's okay. That's the only option they have, and they'll figure out what to do when they're done. And so he's like, okay. And you have all of these other ships and everything out there from this fleet shooting at them, trying to kill them. And then chapter 27, the stormtroopers are found in the cells where Kip and Han were at. And that information is given to Dala. Dala finds out, going through the logs, that Quee broke them out of their cells. So she orders her troops to stop them. She orders some TIE fighters to get out ready to stop if they try to take a ship or anything, to be on the patrol. And she goes through all the logs, finds out that those stormtroopers' armor were taken into the laboratory areas. And so she's like, all right, we're going to stop them. And these stormtroopers are coming into the lab where the Star Crusher is and starting to shoot at it. Han, Chewie, Kip, and Quee get into the Star Crusher. It's a smaller ship, so they're kind of crammed in there, but they get in there, they close it up, and Quee's telling him they need to fly. They need to get out of here. They need to go. And so he's telling Kip, he's like, as soon as we get out of here, I need you to navigate out through the black holes. And the blaster hits are just bouncing off of the Sun Crusher. And he's like, this thing's indestructible, right? And she was like, against anything that I had access to, yeah. Why? And he starts it up and just flies right out of the window. Just breaks through it out. The space starts pulling the stormtroopers into it until it's sealed off. And the TIE fighters are trying to shoot it down, but because it's indestructible to their weaponry, everything just keeps coming off of it. So they start to swarm it to keep it from going anywhere. They just go like full on, just swarm it. And so Han increases it and starts to like slice through them. And then he turns around, goes through sees one of the Star Destroyers, and then goes through it, destroying that. Like it starts to explode. Dala's on the captain area of one of the Star Destroyers. She's like watching this happen, and she's like, stop him. And they can't really stop him because the Sun Crusher is slicing through everything. So she's freaking out and she's getting so pissed. She lost one Star Destroyer. And while it cut through that and it's cutting through some of the TIE fighters, it goes off into the black hole clusters. So she brings in all the TIE fighters. She's like, all right, we're leaving. And the Maw scientists are like radioing up to her, like, you can't leave us. You can't leave us. This is your whole job. And she's like, we are under new orders. You can come with us or you can stay. I will not leave my fleet here. And they're like, just leave us some of your fleet. And she's like, no. So she starts following them outside of the black holes and puts in the coordinates of how to leave the Maw safely. And so they're still shooting at the Sun Crusher. They're trying to get it to go into a black hole. They're trying to swarm it still, like, and she brings all the TIE fighters back into the Star Destroyers, and she's like, we're gonna follow it and we're gonna get it. And chapter 28. the Sun Destroyer is going through, or the Sun Crusher is going through the black holes. Kip closes his eyes. He's navigating it. Kui is just like, okay, what's going on here? And as they're coming out, they see Han and Chewie are coming out of the Maw here. You have Lando and Luke that are about to go into the Maw in the Millennium Falcon. They almost go into like a head-on collision. They like barely miss each other. And then Han sees that that's the Millennium Falcon. I mean, he gets pissed. He's like, who is flying my ship? And Luke is like, was that Han? was that him? So they set up a secure communication from the Millennium Falcon to the Sun Crusher, and Han's like yelling at them like, who the hell is flying my ship? And Lando's like, it's me, and I'm here with Luke. And they're like, oh, it's you guys. What's up? Like we've been looking for you. And he tells them that they took out the navigation unit of the Millennium Falcon, so they can't do a jump. And so Kip and Han, everything, like, we'll do the coordinates for you and everything. So they're flying side by side now, and they see the fleet of people from Kessel coming in to try and shoot the Millennium Falcon. So the Sun Crusher goes behind the Millennium Falcon to kind of take on that fire. And so the fleet's chasing both of them while they're trying to get coordinates to jump. And then right as they're about to catch up to them, Dala and her fleet come out of the Maw. And so you have 3 Star Destroyers. And then once they start doing that, the people from Castle start to turn and they start firing on the Star Destroyers. So the Star Destroyers start defending themselves, and out come all of these TIE fighters. So there's this huge firefight between Kessel's forces and Dala's forces. And while they're fighting, Han is able to get the coordinates to Lando, and they jump and they leave. They bounce. So chapter 29, Han is reunited with Leia, and he's reunited with the twins. He's super happy and everything. He's telling Leia that he missed her. She's happy. There's tears involved. It's a joyful reunion. Kui is being not quite taken prisoner, but not quite taken prisoner. She's been taken to a secure location so she can be questioned and interrogated. And the scientists are taking the Sun Crusher off to be researched. Yeah, taken apart and like kind of looked into it. And so she's upset that they're taking her Sun Crusher, something she's devoted the last 7 years of her life to. But she's like, I understand it. It's okay. She's like, I need to not be emotional here. I chose this. And so she's like, if they want help, I could help them, but I don't think they want my help. So I'm just trying to be, she's just there nervous, like very bird-like fluttery around. And General Wedge completes the relocation process for Gantoris' tribe, and so he's there. He's reporting into Leia that in Gantoris that everybody's relocated. They set up some new buildings, everything. He'll be there for a little bit to see if make sure everything's going good, but everything's fine. And then a man shows up in like full-on Men in Black type thing with a briefcase. And Lando sees him. He's like, oh shit, it's a Predator. And he's like trying to like turn around like this. And the man's like, found you. I finally got you. So Lando is like, what is it? And the man's like, you're a hard man to get a hold of. And he's like, this is for you. And he hands him the briefcase. Lando's opens it up, and there's 1,000,000 credits in there. And Lando's like, what is this? And the man tells him that he was sent from the governor of Umgul. He tells him that he's like, the governor wanted to give you a message. The message was that when Dak was given back to the Duchess was so pleased and so thankful that she invested a part of her planet's economy into Umgul and into their whole economy type thing. They have a new arena being built. She's paying for new blobstacle cores. She's so excited that she decided that she's going to set up a palace there as well to be a part of the blob races, since they were obviously so important to her Dak, and that the governor brought her Dak back to her. So she's just so excited. So he's like, here, you keep the governor's like, you keep the $1,000,000 credits. And he's like, I have everything I could have ever wanted here. And so the man tells him there's $1,000,000 credit, and he's like, as well as this briefcase, which is worth 60 credits. And he just hands that over to Lando, and Lando's like, boom, I am back. And so they're just really excited about that. And Han introduces Kip to Luke, tells him about what he's seen of him using the Force and that he met a Jedi. And so he's like, okay. He's like, well, let's scan him. They use the crystal pads. They scan him. They see a bunch of blue. They also see a little red. And Luke's like, I wonder what that could mean. And so he's like, let me try another test too. So he's like, I'm going to touch you mentally with my mental fingers. Finds the nub at the back of Kip's head, pokes it, and is thrown so hard across the room and lands on his back that the wind is almost knocked out of him. And so Han is just like, you okay? He's like, is this a good recruit? I'm pretty sure he'd be a good recruit. And Luke's like, yeah, you definitely be a good recruit. So they go off to the planet that Mon Mothma and Leia had found them. They found them a planet, and so they go off there. So it's him, Gantoris, Streen, and Kip. Those are the first recruits. And Luke is, at the end of the book, he's really excited to start this academy, and he's super worried that he's like, how will I know who's a dark man who's going to lead somebody to temptation? He's like, how will I be able to stop that if that happens? How will I be able to identify it? He's starting to question himself, and then but he's like, everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. And that's how the book ends. And this one was a ridiculous amount of information within this book. And I really enjoyed it. I rated this a 5 out of 5. I am super excited to continue my journey into this trilogy. And then the trilogy before this one, I keep forgetting, I think it's the Thorn trilogy, was written right before this. So that was after the movies, but right before this trilogy happened. But it was such a great book. This is such an immersive story. All of this was in this tiny little book. It did not seem like it was this much information, but it was. It was so good. It was so good. But thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you guys have an amazing day, night, afternoon, whatever it is where you are. If you want to read this book, I put the link for a library finder. If you're within the United States, you can look at your local library. My local library has a ton of Star Wars books, both physically and I think digitally. And so maybe yours does too. If you want to read it without buying it, definitely check out your local library. If you do want to buy it, or if you read it and decide you want to buy it, I've also put the link for the local bookshops that you can also buy this from. What it is, it's a website that uses your local bookstore's inventory to ship you things. It's like shopping on Amazon, except it's for your local bookstores, and your money doesn't go to somebody who doesn't need it. So I don't like shopping for things on Amazon if I can help it, but I'm a little biased against Amazon most times. But that's also there. Supports your local bookstore, support your local libraries, either one. I'll have the links down below. I'll also have the links for my socials in there. This was our first pick for my community in my Discord. being able to vote for what book we're going to read next. So I have a list of all of the books I own physically, and everybody gets to vote on what I read after I finish a book. And those ones get higher priority in my reviews and my videos and all of that stuff. So you'll be seeing those a little bit first. So if you want to see me read or hear about me reading a specific book, definitely check that out. And I will hopefully talk to you guys very soon. Bye.